Take my bride, let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill. Now there's a small but respectable list of people that were significant and influential in the early development of the automotive industry as a whole, despite the fact that they themselves did not make cars, or design them, or race them, or sell them. And some of the people on this list were media moguls of the day. Many newspaper and magazine publishers were instrumental in not only promoting and growing motorsports, but also in acclimating the public towards automobiles in general. One of these publishers made a huge impact in auto racing at the beginning of the 20th century, and his legacy is well respected by automotive historians. Unfortunately, the man himself was not particularly respectable. Gordon Bennett. James Gordon Bennett Jr. was born in New York in 1841, the only son of an extremely wealthy publisher. His father founded the New York Herald in 1835, and within a decade it had the largest circulation of any newspaper in the United States. Since his father was called James, young Bennett simply chose to be known by his middle name to distinguish between them. Gordon was sent to France for his primary education, and while he was there took up a hobby, yachting. He completed his schooling in France at the age of 16 and returned home to New York. Gordon turned out to be a skilled sailor, and being essentially a super wealthy spoiled brat, he had Daddy custom build him a racing yacht to his specifications, the Henrietta, which was completed in early 1861. Not long after, the American War between the states began, and Gordon volunteered himself and his yacht to serve in what was, at the time, the equivalent of the U.S. Coast Guard. He spent a year doing various patrols and support missions in the Henrietta. Now there's a story that during this time, Gordon was dozing on the deck when he was awakened by the hooting of an owl. He looked about and saw that his yacht was heading straight for a sandbar. He quickly changed course and thus did not run aground. How true this story is or not is debated, but that for the rest of his life Gordon was absolutely fascinated with owls is well known. Bennett took over the reins of the New York Tribune from his father in 1866. Now at the head of the most powerful newspaper in America, he began to collect yachts, finance scientific explorations. The famous Stanley expedition where he says, Dr. Livingston, I presume, was financed by Gordon. Promoting yacht racing and partying hard. Real hard. Now, to be fair, he was very good at running his newspaper well. Indeed, he had established other publications which were financially successful, and the influence of his publishing empire was considerable. However, the moment you added alcohol to the equation, Gordon would say and do things that today would land him in jail or worse. For example, he had a bad habit, and I mean this was a habit, he did it quite often, of getting drunk and then having his coachman hitch up the horses in the middle of the night. Then he'd dismiss his coachman, jump into the driver's seat, and with a shout, take off in the coach at a full run down the road, laughing and shouting the whole time. Oh, did I mention that he always did this in the nude? Despite his constant drunken carousing and tomfoolery, he did manage to get engaged, or rather his father insisted he get engaged in 1876. His new fiancée, Caroline May, was part of another wealthy New York family, and the marriage was somewhat political in nature. However, it was not to be. On New Year's Day, 1877, the May family were having a get-together at their mansion. Gordon was stone drunk when he staggered into the mansion. He made some unintelligible shouts and waves, looked around, and went up to the fireplace. Then he dropped his pants and urinated into it in front of everybody. Needless to say, this ended the engagement. The next day, Caroline's brother, Frederick, challenged him to 10 paces with pistols, which Gordon accepted, and the two of them went through with it. Thankfully for both of them, they were bad shots and no one was hurt, but it became obvious that Bennett was no longer welcome in New York high society. He left for Paris later that month and would spend most of the rest of his life abroad, boozing it up on his yacht surrounded by scantily clad women. And were it not for the fact that he still was a skilled businessman, powerful publishing magnate, and a racing enthusiast, the story would end here. Bennett sponsored a new yacht race he called the Bennett Cup in 1896. This was a competition between nations, each country providing a team and vessel. The winner received the cup and the yachting club of their nation bragging rights across the world. The whole contest sold papers like hotcakes, and so, in 1899, Gordon decided to do the same thing, except this time with automobiles. He was primarily living in France at the time and was a member of the Automobile Club of France. He offered to sponsor a race and to provide the prize, the Bennett Cup, to the winning nation. The AFC approved of the idea, and the first automotive Bennett Cup was on. The rules laid out by Bennett were very specific and far more stringent than those required by other race organizers of the day. First, to keep the spirit of this being a competition between nations and their auto clubs as opposed to individuals, all drivers and their respective cars must come from the same country as their club. Each club that wished to compete for the trophy would pay a modest fee of 3,000 francs for the privilege. The race would be between 550 and 650 kilometers, 340 to 400 miles for the rest of us. Each club could enter 3 cars into the race, each requiring both driver and a mechanic. Additionally, there were weight requirements. The car could weigh no less than 880 pounds dry, while the driver and mechanic could weigh no less than 133 pounds apiece. The first race took place on June 14, 1900, the venue being the Paris to Lyon. Of course, the news media reported heavily on the race, and the winner, Fernand Charron, brought the cup home to France. This not only sold lots of papers across the globe, but it also made cars a national thing amongst the common folk. A Frenchman that did not own a car now had reason to be proud of his country's automobiles over the cars of other nations. This spurred on the rivalry between national car clubs across the world, and for the next 5 years, the Bennett Cup would be fought over by the best cars and drivers in the world. Bennett himself never drove a car, nor did he ever attend one of his own races that he sponsored. Yet the races he created were the basis of what would become the Grand Prix racing circuit, which the ACF first held in 1906, replacing the Bennett Cup. Bennett created yet another cup that same year, this one for balloon racing to keep selling the papers. It is true that Bennett was not a disciplined man, spending much of his time passed out, drunk, and probably naked at the same time on the decks of one of his yachts. It is a fact that at that time, if you were to see or hear of something that was inappropriate and yet astonishing, one might say, Bennett, instead of holy cow or great Scott. Yet despite this, his enthusiasm for auto racing resulted in the Grand Prix we all know of today. And I think it's fair to say that this is a respectable accomplishment in automotive history. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we will see you next week. Peace.